I don't know much about flowers. I wasn't sure if all flowers that bloomed in May were Mayflowers or if they were a specific type or whatever. We didn't have those growing up. Though we had allowances for some things we derived joy from, most of our possessions were tied to some necessity or another. Flowers were frivolous to my parents. They thought they were part of the plague the invaders brought with them. They called themselves refugees, but my parents, among many others from my home, had other words to describe them. Like everyone else, I thought they would be a problem at first. I thought they brought crime and poverty and drained our resources. But then a family moved only 2 homes down from ours. With only a backyard separating us, I was able to see them more clearly. The family between us took to them right away and planted the beautiful flowers they brought with them. Of course, my mother hated our in-between neighbour for this. A lifelong friendship ended immediately over how our mutual neighbour welcomed the refugees. What really did it was when my father's closest acquaintance led the charge against the refugees moving next to our homes. He would speak at length about how inappropriate it was that we would do anything for these people before we did for our own vagrants, but I knew he did not care about our own vagrants. Actually, a year before the refugees came, he pretty much spoke against the vagrants with as much heavy hatred. The flowers weren't the only beautiful thing I found in their backyard. His name was Flynn. When I learned this, I couldn't stop saying it over and over in my head. I even wrote it out in my native tongue. Though I knew it was incorrect, it helped me visualize him more. I liked saying his name, and I liked him. Same-sex relationships were not an issue, but he was a refugee. We all saw what was said about them. We all knew they were out there somewhere destroying our society, making our home dirty. Flynn and his family weren't doing anything close to that though. So I stopped paying attention to my parents at night when they would share the refugee news of the day. One afternoon my mother caught me outside smiling. I was thinking about flowers, about how good they smelled, how sweet and inviting they were. Flying insects couldn't avoid them, and although they were not good for the flora, I could not blame them for how attracted they were to the beauty they possessed. And that's where my smile grew, when I repeated the name in my head. Flynn, as beautiful as the flowers he brought with him. Flynn with eyes too small and a million faces for every turn of events. Flynn. My mother wasn't dumb. She saw it coming weeks earlier when she caught me helping our mutual neighbour with their garden. Not only was I elbow deep into the floral abominations, but I was also caught breathing the same air as Flynn. What scared me most is how much I did not care anymore. He did not smell sweet like the multicoloured blooms. He smelled like something entirely more. And I wasn't afraid to defy my parents and tell them how much I craved his dirty scent more and more each day. The fire in my mother's eyes would have been enough to hurt if I hadn't left right then. Of course, I directly marched 2 doors down. A flash downpour caught me before I made it there, so I did not have time to think of what I would say to him or his family when they opened their home. Soaked to the bone, I stood on their doorstep, my breath heavy with anticipation and fear. The door creaked open, and there stood Flynn, his eyes widening in surprise. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and inviting, cutting through the rain's cold bite. "Hi," I managed to say, shivering but not from the chill. "Can I come in?" He stepped aside, letting me into their cosy home. The scent of warm food filled the air, a spice I could not name but one I could almost taste. Flynn's mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, her eyes filled with curiosity but no judgment. "What happened?" Flynn asked, concern knitting his brows together. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my wet clothes and the even heavier burden of my words. I needed to see you," I began, unsure of how to untangle the knot of emotions in my chest. Flynn nodded slowly, his gaze steady on mine. "Let's go to my room," he suggested, leading me away from the curious eyes of his mother. Once we were alone, I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. Flynn secured the door before looking at me for a long time. "What's going on?" he asked softly. I hesitated, then blurted out, I don't care what they say about you or your family. I don't care about the flowers or the news or anything. I like you, Flynn, more than I've ever liked anyone." For a moment there was silence. Then Flynn smiled, a slow, genuine smile which made my heart race. "I like you too," he admitted. "I've liked you for a while." Relief washed over me, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. I was afraid, I confessed. Afraid of what my parents would think, what everyone would think. Flynn reached out, his hand warm and solid on mine. In that moment, occupying his sacred space with the rain pattering softly against the window, I felt a sense of belonging I didn't know before. The world outside might have been filled with fear and prejudice, but here, with Flynn, there was only acceptance and the promise of something beautiful. I jumped when his father knocked on the door. Although I was sure I held no threat and he was such a big man, he still held a look of distrust. One thing I didn't think much about was the harassment they received when they arrived, the names they were called, and I'm sure with that, knowing even my own people, there were physical threats to go with it all. I tried to quickly explain what I was doing there, but struggled to form the proper words, as I'm sure I do not have to explain. English is not my first language. I tried my best to tell him I didn't mean them any harm. It's hard to do, as I wasn't raised to make too many faces to convey emotion the way they were. From behind, Flynn called his father's alarm off and shut his door. Then, after he offered me something to dry off with. It was then that I realised I didn't know what to fully say to him. My family, my friends, my community were cruel to them when they first came. We weren't exactly friends, but still he brought me into his most sacred environment. Within his sanctuary, he opened a portal on a piece of furniture to reveal it was full of clothes. Right away I invaded his private space, but he didn't seem to mind. I touched all the garments, although I knew this was extremely rude. I couldn't avoid it if I wanted to. The variety, the smell, the absolute diversity of it all. I could tell a lot about these items with just touch alone, but I didn't want to scare him. Besides, with the flowers and his garments being so different from the next, I didn't want to ruin what else I might find. "Put this on." He handed me a top garment. "Take yours off first." "Oh," I smiled. I thought I would just put the dry one over the wet one. Then I did something I never did before, something I didn't know I had in me. I blinked one eye rapidly in the same way he did when he wanted to convey a sense of playfulness I didn't notice right away. Perhaps even a sense of alerting me to attraction. I shuttered a single eyelid the way he did when he wanted to convey that a subject that came to the surface was only for us to know or understand, and it wasn't lost on him that this expression was entirely new to me. The way he smiled at me grew a warmth that grew from my core and spread to my limbs. I wished to claim he only smiled that way for me, as I never saw him do it for anyone else, but I wasn't around him all the time and could not say if this was true or not. But for some reason, I wanted to say it anyway. He made me want to make bold claims about everything, which is absolutely amazing, except I didn't know how to tell him that. But when I removed my own top garment, he gasped right away. And for a moment, I felt an ache in my chest and neck when I thought I saw that he was afraid of me. I looked down at myself, remembering the marks and scars that told the story of my life. They were common to me, but to him they were alien. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. It's just me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry if it's too much." Flynn shook his head, stepping closer. "No, it's not that. It's just, you're beautiful." I blinked, unsure if I heard him correctly. "Beautiful? Like flowers?" He nodded, his hand reaching out tentatively to touch one of the marks on my shoulder. "Yeah. They tell a story, don't they? Your story. Each one from a significant event." I felt a warmth spread through me, chasing away the cold of the rain and the fear of rejection. "Yes," I said quietly. "They do." Flynn's touch was gentle, almost reverent, as he traced the lines and patterns on my skin. "I want to know your story," he said, looking into my eyes. All of it. The sincerity in his voice broke down the last of my defences. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of acceptance. I want to tell you, I whispered. I want to tell you all of it. He smiled then, that same playful, enchanting smile that drew me to him in the first place. Then we have all the time in the world, he said, pulling me into a hug. As I stood there, enveloped in his warmth and the scent of flowers and rain, I realised that this was where I belonged, not in a world defined by fear and prejudice, but in a world where I could be myself, where I could love and be loved. Flynn was right. We had all the time in the world to share our stories, to build a life together, and I was ready to take that first step, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The rain continued to fall outside, washing away the remnants of the past, as Flynn and I began to write our own story, one chapter at a time. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to react that way. I mean, I expected the marks, and I know you guys don't have nipples. It's shockingly different. I asked him, nipples? He then explained, and I realised he described something only females had as part of reproduction. But I didn't know what he fully meant until I realised he probably had them. Can I see? I asked excitedly before I realised my place. I fully expected to be turned away by them. I fully expected to lose fascination with him once I saw this female organ he and all his men had. But when he lifted his shirt and I could see how he was made, I couldn't control my next movements. My hands were immediately on him, touching every part of his exposed upper body. Then his hands were on mine. Both of us were fascinated with what the other had or didn't have. What became obvious was how similar our anatomy was further down. Then he did it. He leaned in. And I'm ashamed to admit, I at first thought of all the times my own people claimed humans came to our planet to eat us. But I knew what he was doing. I'd seen it in their art. He pressed his mouth to mine. An act that looked so foreign, something I couldn't understand. And it was only then that I knew this kiss thing could only be understood through experience and nothing less. And I grasped him tight, knowing I wanted to experience every connection our bodies could make. At first his eyes were wide, but quickly I mastered keeping my longer tongue from going too far. I didn't know two beings could become this familiar with each other. I didn't know connections could be made on such a personal level. We talked the best we could for most of the night. He wasn't equipped to learn my language, but I adapted better to his the more I spoke to him. He said it was amazing how quickly I caught on, and although I wanted to explain how easy it was, I quickly picked up that it was rude to remind others you're better than they are at something, even if you are. I found out his family came from Earth 2 years earlier on Mayflower 6. I remembered seeing it in the notifications. I remember how obscene everyone thought it was that a sixth ship arrived full of refugees. We didn't know dozens more would follow. We fell asleep that night. Well, he fell asleep, and I watched. I couldn't know the thoughts he had, but I knew he had them as his face made the same movements as when he was awake. Something told a story in his head while he slept, and at moments it made him confused. Sometimes he shook with anger, or he sighed in sadness, but mostly he would smile or laugh. With each shift he made, I told myself not to remain so still. I was happy they came. The next day I would have to face what that meant for me, my family, and my community. But I knew no matter what, I wasn't going to easily let go of the happiness his unlimited diversity brought me. When morning light crept through the window, casting a gentle glow over Flynn's sleeping face, I felt a sense of calm I had never known before. I carefully slipped out of bed, trying not to wake him. The house was quiet, filled with the faint sounds of a new day beginning outside. My eyes wandered around his space, taking in the subtle differences in decoration and the small personal touches that made it uniquely his. It even smelled like him. Like the flying insects and the new flowers, I could never get enough. I wanted him in my nostrils all the time. Photos hung on the walls, showing moments of joy and togetherness. I felt a pang of guilt thinking about my own family's hostility and how little I had tried to understand the newcomers. I quietly got up and went downstairs to find a bathroom. Flynn's mother found me in the kitchen, her face kind but curious. "Did you sleep well?" she asked gently. I nodded, feeling a bit shy under her gaze. "Yes, thank you. I hope it's okay that I stayed." She smiled warmly. "Of course. If my son welcomes you, then you're welcome here." Her acceptance was strange but nice. We spoke for a while, and she told me more about their journey and the hardships they faced upon arriving. It was eye-opening, and I felt a growing respect for their resilience, uncertain if myself or anyone I knew would be strong enough to survive such challenges. When Flynn finally woke up and joined us, he looked at me with a smile that melted away any lingering fears. He and I spent the morning together in their back garden, but reality wouldn't be ignored forever. As the day wore on, I knew I had to go back home and face my parents. Flynn walked me to the door, his hand lingering in mine. "Will you be okay?" he asked, concern etched in his features. I squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I'll be fine. I have to try and make them understand." The walk back home was short but felt like a journey across worlds. When I stepped through the door, my parents were waiting, their faces a mix of worry and anger. "Where were you?" my mother demanded, her eyes narrowing. "I was with Flynn," I said calmly, bracing myself for the storm. My father frowned deeply. "We've talked about this. They're not like us. They don't belong here." "You're wrong," I replied, my voice steady. "They deserve a chance to live in peace." My parents were silent, their expressions a blend of shock and disgust. I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of courage. "I care about him," I continued, "and I'm not going to let your prejudices stand in the way of that. You raised me to be better than this, to see people for who they are, not where they come from." There was a long, tense silence. Finally, my mother's shoulders sagged a bit, and she looked away. "We were just trying to protect you," she said softly. "I know," I replied, "but sometimes protection can turn into something else." My father's expression softened slightly, and he gave a reluctant nod. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. I knew it would take time for my parents to fully come around, but it was a start, and with Flynn by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The flowers outside continued to bloom, a symbol of new beginnings and the beauty that comes from embracing change. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that Flynn and I would create something beautiful together. No matter the challenges we faced,